Redfield, Wyoming isn't the kind of place that makes headlines. It's tucked away between endless stretches of dry grasslands and cattle ranches, where mornings start with a low hum of tractors and everyone knows your name whether you want them to or not. A nod hello in the street is about as social as it gets, and gossip spreads faster than a prairie fire. That's the world I live in, simple, quiet, and mostly predictable. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 27, white, with the kind of build that comes from years of heavy lifting rather than hitting the gym. I work as a repair guy and delivery driver for the local agricultural co-op. My days are filled with hauling milk crates from one farm to the next, fixing broken tractors for old-timers who can't bend down anymore, and helping out with whatever odd jobs come up. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me out of trouble. I live alone in a small rented house near the highway, the kind with creaky floors and a front porch that sags a little on one side. No family waiting for me at home, no drama, just me, a cold beer after a long shift, and the occasional howl of wind whipping through the fields at night. Laura Bennett is someone everyone in Redfield knows. At 43, she's the no-nonsense manager of the town's only general store, the hub where folks stock up on everything from canned goods to gossip. She's got that practical beauty, dark hair usually tied back, sharp green eyes that don't miss a thing, and a way of carrying herself that says she's handled more than her share of hard knocks. Laura used to have a family, but that's ancient history now. She runs the store like a tight ship, always straightforward to the point of being blunt. People respect her for it, or at least they pretend to. She's the type who doesn't need anyone, or so it seems. She's been holding things together on her own for years. We weren't supposed to cross paths like that. It was one of those late summer weekends when the co-op threw its outdoor farmers market in the town square. The air was thick with the smell of fresh hay, grilled corn, and diesel from the trucks. I was there early, helping unload crates of milk and produce, stacking them neatly on wooden tables under the tents. Folks milled around, chatting about the weather or the latest cattle prices, kids running wild between the stalls. Laura was manning the checkout booth for the co-op section, ringing up jars of honey and bags of flour with her usual efficiency. That's when it happened. A little kid, no more than 5 years old, came tearing through the crowd, laughing and chasing a stray balloon. He tripped over a loose crate I'd just set down, tumbling hard onto the gravel path. The boy let out a piercing wail, his knees scraped and bleeding, face twisted in pain. Without thinking, I dropped what I was holding and rushed over. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" I said, kneeling down and scooping him up gently to check if he was hurt bad. He was squirming and crying, flailing his arms, so I held his hand firmly to keep him from falling again while I scanned the crowd for his parents. "Where's your mom? Let's find her," I murmured, trying to calm him. The market noise seemed to fade as I stood there, the kids' sobs echoing in my ears. People were starting to notice, a few stepping closer with concerned looks. Then, out of nowhere, Laura appeared from behind her booth. Her eyes locked on me, holding this crying child tightly by the hand. Something flashed across her face. Panic, suspicion, I don't know. Before I could explain, she charged forward and shouted at the top of her lungs, "What the hell are you doing? Let go of him right now!" The words hit like a gut punch. The entire market froze. Conversations halted mid-sentence, heads whipped around, and every eye drilled into me. I felt the blood rush to my face, hot and prickling, my heart slamming against my ribs like it wanted to burst out. My hand dropped the boy's instantly as if it had been burned. I was just trying to help," I stammered, my voice barely above a whisper. "He fell, and I was looking for his mom." Laura snatched the child into her arms, clutching him protectively, her eyes blazing, with a mix of fear and accusation. "No one asked you to touch him," she snapped, loud enough for the whole square to hear. "In this town, we don't need strangers grabbing kids like that." The boy clung to her, still whimpering, but now the murmurs started rippling through the crowd. "What's going on?" someone whispered. "Did he try to take the kid?" Another voice chimed in louder. "Looks suspicious. Why is he holding on so tight?" A few people pulled out their phones, probably snapping pictures or texting the news already. Old Mr. Harlan from the feed store shook his head, muttering, "You never know with these young drifters." I stood there, paralyzed, the weight of all those stares crushing me. My throat tightened, making it hard to breathe. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool morning air. I'd helped people in this town for years, fixed their equipment, delivered their supplies through blizzards. But in that instant, I was the outsider, the potential threat, the guy who looked like he might be up to no good. My mind raced. How did this happen? I was just trying to do the right thing. But now I was the villain in everyone's eyes. The kid's actual mother pushed through the crowd a second later, scooping him up from Laura with a relieved gasp. "Oh, thank God. Tommy, are you okay?" She shot me a wary glance but didn't say anything. Laura stepped back, her expression softening just a fraction as realization dawned, but it was too late. The damage was done. The whispers grew. That Ethan kid, always keeping to himself. Yeah, lives alone out by the highway, kinda odd. I felt exposed, like every secret I'd ever buried was suddenly laid bare under the sun. In that moment, all I wanted was to disappear, to sink into the ground, vanish from Redfield forever. My hands shook as I turned away, weaving through the staring faces without a word. I climbed into my truck, the engine roaring to life louder than it needed to, and peeled out of the square, gravel crunching under the tires. The highway blurred as I drove home, the shame burning in my chest. Why did she have to yell like that? Why in front of everyone? And why did it feel like the whole town had just branded me? I pulled into my driveway, slamming the door behind me, and collapsed onto the porch steps. The wind picked up, rustling the dry grass, but it did nothing to cool the fire inside. For the first time in years, I questioned why I stayed in this godforsaken place. But deep down, I knew this wasn't over. Redfield was too small for that, but the next day came whether I wanted it to or not. Redfield is one of those towns where you can't hide from anyone or anything. It's too small and too interconnected. Everyone shops at the same store, fills up at the same gas station, and waves at the same faces on the same dusty roads. I woke up with a knot in my stomach, replaying the market scene over and over in my head. The stares, the whispers, Laura's shout, it all looped like a bad dream I couldn't shake. I told myself to push through, focus on work. The co-op had a repair job lined up, fixing the air conditioner at the general store. Of course, it had to be Laura's store. No one else in town had the skills or the tools for it, and the boss didn't give me a choice. "Just get it done, Ethan," he said over the phone. "Folks are complaining about the heat." I loaded my truck with the toolkit, a new compressor unit, and a sinking feeling. The drive into town felt longer than usual, the highway stretching out like it was mocking me. When I pulled up to the store, the parking lot was half empty, mid-morning lull. I grabbed my gear and walked in, the bell above the door jingling like an unwelcome announcement. The place smelled like fresh coffee and cardboard boxes, the aisle stocked with everything from canned beans to farm tools. Laura was behind the counter sorting receipts, her back to me at first. She turned when she heard the door and our eyes met. For a split second, there was a flicker. Regret? Surprise? I couldn't tell. I nodded stiffly and headed straight for the back room where the AC unit was housed, avoiding any small talk. I spent the first hour buried in the work, crawling into the dusty vent system, testing wires and swapping out parts. The hum of the fan I was fixing drowned out my thoughts, but not completely. Every creak of the floorboards made me tense, wondering if she'd come check on me. Eventually she did. I heard her footsteps approaching, and there she was, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed. The light from the store filtered in behind her, casting her in a soft glow. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me wrench a bolt loose. The silence stretched until it was uncomfortable. "About yesterday," she finally said, her voice quieter than I'd expected. I owe you an apology." I paused, wiping sweat from my forehead with the back of my hand, but I didn't look up right away. My heart was pounding again, not from anger exactly, but from the raw edge of humiliation that hadn't faded. "It's fine," I muttered, focusing on the unit. "You were just looking out for the kid. That's what anyone would do." She shifted her weight, leaning against the doorframe. "No, it wasn't fine. I reacted too fast. Saw you holding him like that and I don't know, something snapped. But I shouldn't have yelled in front of everyone. That wasn't right." I finally glanced at her. Her expression was softer now, those green eyes searching mine, and for the first time, I saw a crack in her usual tough exterior, maybe guilt, maybe something else. It caught me off guard. "Like I said, no big deal," I replied. but my voice came out tighter than I meant. Inside, the wound was still fresh. Being called out like that, made to look like some creep, it stung deeper than I wanted to admit. I'd always prided myself on being the reliable guy, the one who helped without asking for thanks. Now I felt like the town pariah. She didn't push it further then, just nodded and left me to finish the job. I wrapped up an hour later, testing the cool air blasting from the vents. When I came out to the front, she was ringing up a customer, an old farmer buying feed sacks. I waited until he left, then handed her the invoice. All set. Should hold up through the summer. Thanks, she said, signing it without meeting my eyes. As I turned to go, she added, Ethan, really, I'm sorry. I paused at the door, the bell jingling softly. Yeah, me too. I didn't elaborate. What was there to say? Sorry for trying to help? Sorry for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time? I stepped out into the glaring sun, the heat hitting me like a reminder of how exposed I still felt. But Redfield didn't let things end there. The town was too damn small. The very next day, I stopped at the gas station on my way to a delivery run. As I filled up my truck, Laura's car pulled in 2 pumps over. She got out, grabbing a coffee from the mini-mart inside. Our paths crossed at the door, she coming out, me heading in to pay. Morning, I said, keeping it neutral. Morning, she replied, her tone awkward. We both hesitated, like neither knew if we should say more. Hot one today, I added, just to fill the silence. Yeah, fields are gonna crisp up, she said, echoing the kind of small talk that passed for conversation around here. We nodded and went our ways, but it felt forced, like we were both tiptoeing around the elephant in the room. It happened again a couple days later. I needed groceries after a long shift. Bread, eggs, some canned soup for quick dinners. Of course, the only place to get them was her store. I kept my head down, grabbing what I needed and heading to the counter. She was there, scanning items for another customer. When it was my turn, she rang me up in silence at first, then said quietly, How's the truck holding up? Heard you had a flat last week. I was surprised she knew. Small-town news travels. Fixed it. No big issue. I paid and grabbed my bags, but as I left, she called out softly, Take care out there. Those little encounters piled up. One afternoon, I was walking along the dirt road leading out to the fields, clearing my head after a tough repair job on a combine harvester. The sun was dipping low, painting the grass gold. I heard a car approach and slow down. It was Laura driving back from a supply run. She rolled down the window. Need a lift? Looks like you're miles out. I shook my head. Nah, walking helps me think. But I stopped and we chatted for a minute about the drought, about how the co-op's prices were fluctuating. It was stiff at first, like we were testing the waters. Then came the evening that shifted things. I was done for the day, heading home when my phone buzzed. A call from the co-op boss. Ethan, the store's power flickered out. Can you swing by and check the breaker? Might be a fuse. I groaned inwardly, but agreed. It was after hours the store closed, but Laura was still there, locking up. She let me in, the place dim under emergency lights. Thanks for coming, she said. Lights went out mid-inventory. I headed to the back, flashlight in hand, flipping the panel open and testing circuits. It was a simple fix. A tripped breaker from an overload. As I worked, she hovered nearby, handing me tools when I asked. When it was done, the lights buzzed back on, and she sighed in relief. You're a lifesaver. Coffee? I just brewed some before it went out. I hesitated, but nodded. We sat at a small table in the break room, mugs steaming. The silence wasn't as heavy this time. You know, she said after a sip, I've been thinking about that day at the market. You didn't deserve that. I overreacted because, well, kids are a trigger for me. This town, people talk, but they don't always see the full picture. I stared into my cup. Yeah, well, I've got my own baggage. Grew up getting labeled the quiet kid after my folks passed. Always felt like people were waiting for me to mess up. It slipped out before I could stop it. The first real crack in my armor. She nodded slowly. I get that. My marriage? It ended bad. He was controlling, made me doubt everyone. So I build walls, but that doesn't excuse yelling at you like that. We sat there in the quiet store, the hum of the newly fixed AC the only sound besides the wind outside. For the first time, it felt like we were seeing each other, not as the delivery guy and the store manager, but as people with scars. The conversation stretched, touching on little things, her long days stocking shelves alone, my solitary drives through empty fields. By the time I left, the knot in my chest had loosened just a bit. Redfield might be small, but maybe that meant second chances were unavoidable too. Those chance meetings started to weave into something more deliberate, though neither of us said it out loud at first. After that evening in the store, with the lights flickering back on and our confessions hanging in the air like dust motes, things shifted. Redfield's size worked in our favor, or against it, depending on how you looked at it. I found myself swinging by the general store more often, not just for necessities, but for those brief exchanges that left me feeling a little less alone. Laura began setting aside small things for me, a fresh loaf of bread from the bakery delivery, or a slice of pie she'd baked herself. "Thought you might like this after a long haul," she'd say, sliding it across the counter with a casual smile that didn't quite hide the warmth in her eyes. I'd return the favor in my own way. One afternoon, I noticed the store's front door sticking, the hinges groaning every time a customer pushed through. Without asking, I showed up the next day with my toolkit and oiled them up, tightening the screws until it swung smooth as new. "No charge," I told her when she tried to pay me. "Just helping out." She protested at first, but eventually just shook her head and laughed. "You're too good to this town, Ethan. Don't let it take advantage." Those moments built up, turning into something comfortable, almost routine. We'd chat longer when the store was slow, me leaning on the counter, her restocking shelves nearby. I shared stories from my runs, the time a herd of cattle blocked the road for an hour, forcing me to sit in the truck listening to old country radio while they stared me down like I was the intruder. "They just stood there chewing cud, not a care in the world," I said, mimicking their blank expressions. Laura threw her head back and laughed, a real belly laugh that echoed through the empty aisles, tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "Oh God, I can picture it. You, this big guy, outsmarted by cows." It was the first time I'd seen her let loose like that, her guard down, and it made my chest tighten in a way I hadn't expected. "You're easy to talk to," she admitted once the laughter died down. "Most folks around here just complain about the weather." But Redfield being Redfield, nothing stayed private for long. The whispers started creeping in, subtle at first, but growing louder. I'd catch snippets at the co-op. "Saw Ethan at Laura's store again yesterday, staying late, huh?" Or at the gas station. "She's got to be what, 15 years older? What's a young buck like him doing hanging around a widow like that?" The word widow always stung, like they were reducing her to her past. And me? I was the young buck, the guy who must be getting something out of it. Free repairs for sympathy, or worse, pity points. One old-timer at the feed store even pulled me aside. "Watch yourself, son. Folks are talking. She's a fine woman, but, well, you know how it looks." I tried to brush it off, telling myself it was just small-town noise. But it gnawed at me, stirring up that old fear of being misunderstood, of being seen as the outsider who'd overstepped. Laura must have heard it too, because her smiles got a little tighter when we'd run into each other outside the store. Still, we kept going, me fixing a leaky faucet in her back office one evening, her packing me a sandwich for the road the next. It felt good, natural, like we were filling gaps in each other's days without even trying. Then came the evening that cracked it all open. I was finishing a late delivery, driving back through town as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the fields. I decided to swing by the store for a cold drink before heading home. As I approached, I saw Laura outside talking to a man I didn't recognize. He was slick, city type, in a button-down shirt and slacks, probably a rep from one of the supply companies that shipped goods to Redfield. They were standing close, laughing about something. He reached out and touched her arm lightly, a casual gesture that looked too familiar. She didn't pull away, just smiled and nodded. My stomach twisted. I drove past without stopping, the image burning into my mind. For the next few days, I avoided the store. Picked up my groceries from a truck stop out on the highway instead, even though it meant driving extra miles. The whispers in my head grew louder. What was I even doing? She's older, established. Why would she want some delivery guy like me? Maybe I was just convenient, someone to fix things and fill the quiet hours. The thought festered, mixing with the market humiliation that still lingered. I threw myself into work, hauling loads until my back ached, but it didn't help, Laura noticed. On the fourth day, there was a knock at my door after sunset. I opened it to find her standing on my porch, arms crossed against the chill, a concerned frown on her face. "Ethan, you've been scarce. Everything okay?" I leaned against the doorframe, trying to play it cool. "Yeah, just busy with runs?" She didn't buy it. "Can I come in? It's cold out here." I stepped aside and she walked into my sparse living room. The worn couch, the stack of repair manuals on the coffee table, the faint smell of engine oil that never quite left. She turned to face me. "You're mad at me, aren't you? What did I do?" I hesitated, then let it out. "Saw you the other evening. With that guy from the city. Looked cozy." Her eyes widened. "The supplier rep? We were just talking business. He was updating me on shipments." I shrugged, but my voice came out sharper than I intended. "Looked like more than business, and honestly, Laura, I get it. I'm just the guy who fixes your AC. But I don't like feeling like a stand-in, or worse, like the town joke. After the market, I can't stand being looked at like some creep or replacement for whatever you lost." She froze, hurt flashing across her face. "Is that what you think? That I see you as some convenient fix-it boy? Ethan, you're more than that to me. But if you think I'm using you, maybe you are," I cut in, frustration boiling over. "I'm young, I'm around. Easy to lean on when things get lonely, but that guy? He touches your arm and it's fine. Me? I'd be the scandal." Her cheeks flushed with anger. "You don't know a damn thing about me. I've been alone for years dealing with this town's pity. And now, when I let someone in, you throw it back like this? If you're so worried about what people think, maybe you shouldn't be here at all." The words hung heavy between us. I opened my mouth to respond, but nothing came out. She shook her head, eyes glistening. "Forget it. I thought we were past the misunderstandings." She turned and left, the door clicking shut behind her like a final punctuation. I sank onto the couch, head in my hands. The room felt colder, emptier. We'd built something fragile, and now it was cracking under the weight of all those unspoken fears. Her walls from the past, my insecurities from the present. The town's gossip, my jealousy, our age difference. It all piled on like misunderstandings stacked one on top of the other. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if we'd just shattered whatever this was before it even had a name. One night, the sky opened up like it had a grudge against Redfield. It was one of those sudden Wyoming storms, dark clouds rolling in fast, thunder rumbling like distant artillery, and rain pounding down in sheets that turned the dirt roads into muddy rivers. I'd been out on a late delivery hauling emergency feed sacks to a rancher whose barn had flooded earlier that day. The boss called it in last minute. "Ethan, you're the only one with a truck that can handle the back roads. Get it done." I didn't argue. Work was work, and it kept my mind off the fight with Laura. Her words echoed in my head. "You don't know a damn thing about me." And mine right back. "Maybe you are using me." We'd left things raw, unspoken since she stormed out of my house 3 days ago. I hadn't seen her, hadn't gone to the store, just buried myself in jobs trying to outrun the ache. The rain started light at first, a drizzle that smeared my windshield. But by the time I hit the narrow dirt lane cutting through the fields, it was a deluge. Visibility dropped to nothing. Headlights bouncing off the downpour, wipers slapping uselessly. I gripped the wheel tight, easing off the gas as the truck hydroplaned once, twice. Then, on a sharp bend, the tires lost grip completely. The world tilted. I felt the rear end swing out, the truck skidding sideways into a ditch. Metal groaned as it slammed against the embankment, the impact jarring through my bones. My forehead cracked against the steering wheel, sharp pain, warm blood trickling down my face. The engine sputtered and died, leaving me in darkness broken only by the storm's flashes. I sat there stunned, rain hammering the roof like bullets. My head throbbed, vision blurry from the cut above my eye. I fumbled for my phone, dead battery of course. No signal out here anyway. The ditch was steep, water rushing in fast, turning the cab into a shallow pool. I kicked the door open against the mud and climbed out, slipping on the slick grass. Pain shot through my ankle, but it held. I staggered to the roadside, sitting on a soaked log, pressing my sleeve to the gash on my forehead. Blood mixed with rain dripping down my chin. The field stretched empty in every direction. No lights, no houses, just endless black. Thunder cracked overhead, lightning illuminating the wreckage for a split second. I was miles from town, hurt and alone. For the first time that night, real fear set in. Not just from the accident, but from the isolation that had defined my life. Who would even notice if I didn't make it back? Time blurred in the downpour, minutes, hours. My clothes were soaked through, chills setting in despite the summer warmth. Headlights pierced the darkness eventually, faint at first, then growing brighter. A car approached slowly, tires splashing through puddles. It stopped a few yards away, high beams blinding me. The door flew open and a figure dashed out, umbrella forgotten in the rush. Ethan! Oh God, Ethan! It was Laura. She ran to me, her face pale in the lightning flashes, hair plastered to her head. She dropped to her knees beside me, hands hovering over the blood on my face. What happened? Are you okay? Her voice cracked, trembling with something deeper than concern, panic, maybe even terror. I blinked through the rain, shock mixing with the pain. Laura? How did you know? The rancher called the co-op when you didn't show. Boss mentioned it to someone at the diner. I overheard. I drove out as soon as I could. She touched my forehead gently, wincing at the sight. You're bleeding. Come on, let's get you in my car. She helped me up, her arm around my waist as I limped to her sedan. The warmth inside was a shock after the cold soak. She grabbed a first aid kit from the glove box, always prepared, that was Laura, and pressed gauze to my wound. Hold this. We need to get you to the clinic. I leaned back against the seat, the storm raging outside. I thought, after our fight, you wouldn't care. She froze, her hands still on mine. Rain drummed on the roof, filling the silence. Then her shoulders shook, and she let out a sob. Wouldn't care? Ethan, I thought I'd lost you. When I heard about the accident, God, I imagined the worst. Tears mixed with the rain on her face, her voice breaking. I've been miserable since I left your house. I was wrong. Pushing you away like that. I looked at her, the cut on my head throbbing less than the ache in my chest. I said awful things too, accusing you of using me. I was jealous, stupid. Seeing you with that guy, it brought everything back. The market, the stairs, feeling like I'm always the one who doesn't fit. She shook her head, gripping my hand tighter. No, you were right to call me out. I've built these walls so high because of my ex. He controlled everything, my time, my friends, even how I felt, made me doubt my own instincts. After he left, I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to hurt me again. But with you, it's different. You see me, Ethan. Not the widow, not the store manager. Just me. Lightning lit up her face, vulnerable and open in a way I'd never seen. I squeezed her hand back, the warmth seeping through the cold. I get walls, grew up with them too. After my parents died in that car wreck when I was a kid, I bounced around foster homes, always the quiet one, the kid people whispered about. What's wrong with him? Why doesn't he talk? I learned to keep to myself, fix things instead of people. But that day at the market, it ripped me open, made me feel like that kid again, labeled before I could explain. She leaned closer, her free hand brushing wet hair from my forehead. I'm so sorry for that. Every day since, I've regretted yelling. I saw you with the boy and panicked. Old fears kicking in, but you were just helping, like you always do. You're kind, Ethan. Strong in ways I wish I was. The rain softened to a steady patter, the storm's fury easing as we sat there, confessions spilling out like the floodwaters. I didn't mean to push, I said softly. But yeah, from that moment at the market, even through the hurt, I started noticing you, your strength, how you hold this town together. It scared me because what if I'm not enough? You're more than enough, she whispered, her eyes locking on mine. I need you, Ethan. Not to fix things, but to be here. I just didn't know how to say it without risking everything again. In that cramped car, surrounded by the chaos of the storm, the barriers crumbled. I pulled her into a hug, careful of my injuries, her head resting on my shoulder. The scent of rain and her shampoo filled the space, grounding me. We held each other as the truth settled in. No more hiding behind misunderstandings. The world outside raged, but inside, for the first time, it felt like we'd found shelter. The storm passed that night, leaving behind flooded fields and a sky scrubbed clean by the rain. Laura drove me to the small clinic in town, her hand never leaving mine except when the doctor stitched up my forehead. 7 neat sutures that pulled tight every time I frowned. My ankle was just sprained, nothing broken, but the doc ordered rest and ice. Laura insisted on taking me home, stopping at her store to grab supplies. Bandages, painkillers, even a frozen pizza she tossed in the oven while I propped my foot up on my couch. "You're not doing this alone," she said firmly, her voice still shaky from the scare. I didn't argue. For once, I let someone take care of me. In the days that followed, we didn't slap a label on whatever this was between us. No grand declarations, no rushing to define it. We just were. Laura came by every evening after closing the store, bringing dinner or helping me with chores I couldn't manage on crutches. I'd hobble around insisting I was fine, but she'd roll her eyes and push me back down. "Stubborn as a mule," she'd tease, but there was affection in it, a softness that hadn't been there before. We'd sit on my porch as the sun set, watching the fields dry out, talking about everything and nothing. She opened up more about her ex, how he'd isolated her, made her question her worth until she finally walked away. "I built my life around being independent after that," she admitted one night, staring at the horizon. "But it got lonely. I forgot how good it feels to have someone who actually sees you." I shared my own shadows. The foster homes where I was always the outsider, the labels that stuck like burrs, troubled kid, loner. "That day at the market," I said quietly, "it brought it all back. Felt like I was invisible except when people wanted to judge." She squeezed my hand. "You're not invisible to me, Ethan. Never were." Redfield, of course, noticed. The town had eyes everywhere. Whispers evolved into outright stares when we'd run into folks at the gas station or the co-op. "Look at them, Laura and that young Miller boy. She's old enough to be his, well, aunt at least. What's she thinking? And him? Probably just after a free meal." I heard it all, filtered through the grapevine. Old Mr. Harlan cornered me at the feed store one day. "Son, people are talking. You sure about this? She's got baggage." I straightened up, meeting his gaze. "With respect, sir, that's our business." For the first time, I didn't shrink away. Laura had taught me that, standing tall even when the wind pushed back. She faced it too. Customers at the store would drop hints. "Saw you with Ethan the other day. Nice of you to help him after the accident." She'd smile politely but firmly. "He's a good man, that's all that matters." We didn't hide, but we didn't flaunt it either. I'd help at the store when my ankle healed, stocking shelves, fixing the flickering sign out front. In return, she'd cook for me, hearty stews with potatoes from the local farms or apple pie that filled my house with cinnamon warmth. Those evenings were simple magic. Us at my kitchen table, laughing over burnt edges or sharing stories from our days. "You know," she said one night, fork midway to her mouth, "I might not be the easiest person to love. Age, history, it's a lot." I set my fork down, looking at her across the table. The lamplight caught the lines around her eyes, the ones that spoke of years I'd never lived but somehow understood. "Maybe," I replied with a small smile, "but you look at me like I'm a person, not a suspect or a project. That's more than I've had in a long time." She reached across and took my hand, her touch steady. "You do the same for me." The market moment that once made me want to vanish? It became our anchor, strangely enough. We'd talk about it sometimes, late at night on the porch, wind whispering through the grass. "That day changed everything," I'd say. "Hurt like hell, but it forced us to see each other." She'd nod. "I regret the yelling, but not what came after. You taught me to trust my instincts again. Not everyone's out to control or leave." The town didn't fully accept us, not right away. Gossip lingered like morning fog, but it thinned over time. People saw us together. Me dropping off repairs at the store, her waving from the counter as I drove by. Some nodded approvingly now, others just stopped talking. We lived simply. Shared meals, quiet walks along the back roads where the fields met the sky, hands intertwined away from prying eyes. No big plans, no rushing toward forever. Just day by day, building something real amid the misunderstandings that had nearly torn us apart. And in that quiet happiness, I realized I didn't want to disappear anymore. Redfield, with all its flaws, had given me a reason to stay. Laura, who saw the man beneath the labels, and taught me to see myself that way too. We sat together one evening, watching the stars prick the vast Wyoming sky, her head on my shoulder. The wind carried the faint scent of hay, and for the first time it felt like home. As the months rolled on, life in Redfield settled into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. My stitches came out, leaving a faint scar above my eyebrow, a reminder of the night everything broke open. The sprain healed slower, but Laura was there through it all, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos of my recovery. Work picked up again. I was back on the roads, hauling loads under clearer skies, the fields turning golden with the approach of fall harvest. But now, my days had a different color. Anticipation for those evenings when she'd knock on my door, or I'd swing by the store just as she flipped the closed sign. We navigated the town's gaze with a quiet defiance. Not everyone approved. There were still those sidelong looks at the diner, the muttered comments when we'd grab coffee together. "She's robbing the cradle," one old lady hissed loud enough for us to hear. Laura just squeezed my arm and whispered, "Let them talk. They've got nothing better." I learned to laugh it off, her confidence rubbing off on me. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to hide or explain myself. We weren't flashy about it. No public displays that would fuel the fire. But we weren't hiding either. I'd help her unload deliveries at the store, our hands brushing in ways that said more than words. She'd pack me lunches with notes tucked inside. "Drive safe. See you tonight." Our nights became sacred. We'd cook together in my cramped kitchen, her teaching me recipes passed down from her grandmother. Beef stew simmered slow with root vegetables from the local farms, or cornbread baked golden in a cast-iron skillet. "You're getting better at this," she'd say, bumping my hip playfully as I stirred the pot. We'd eat on the porch, watching fireflies dance in the twilight, talking deep into the hours. She shared stories of her younger days, road trips across the state, dreams of leaving Redfield that never quite panned out. "I thought I'd see the world," she admitted one evening, her voice wistful. But life had other plans. I told her about my own lost paths. The scholarship I turned down after my parents' accident, choosing stability over adventure. "Regret it?" she asked. "Sometimes," I said. "But it led me here." Intimacy grew naturally without rush. Our first kiss happened weeks after the accident, under a harvest moon that bathed the fields in silver. We were walking the back road, her hand in mine, when she stopped and turned to me. "Ethan," she said softly, "I don't want to lose this." I cupped her face, feeling the years between us melt away in that moment. It was gentle, real, not fireworks, but a spark that warmed from the inside out. From there, our connection deepened. We'd spend weekends at her place, a cozy house on the edge of town with a garden she tended like a lifeline. I'd wake to the smell of coffee, her humming in the kitchen, and pull her back to bed for lazy mornings. "You're trouble," she'd laugh. But she'd stay, our bodies fitting together like they'd always known how. Challenges came as they do. A rough patch hit when her ex called out of the blue, some old paperwork needing signatures. Hearing his voice on the phone stirred up ghosts. She was distant for days, snapping at small things. "I'm sorry," she said finally, curling into me on the couch. "He reminds me of what I escaped." I held her, listening as she unpacked the control, the isolation. "You don't have to carry it alone anymore," I told her. In turn, I had my lows, days when the town's judgment weighed heavy, making me question if I was holding her back. "Am I enough?" I asked one night. She traced the scar on my forehead. "More than. You make me feel alive again." We built a life in the spaces between. Trips to nearby Cheyenne for anonymity, where we could hold hands without stares. Quiet picnics in the fields, sharing dreams we'd shelved. She encouraged me to take online classes for mechanic certification. "You've got talent. Don't waste it." I pushed her to expand the store, adding a small cafe corner. "People need a place to gather, and you're perfect for it." Redfield softened over time. Some folks came around. The rancher whose feed I delivered regularly clapped me on the back. "Good on you two." Others never did, but it stopped mattering. Now, as winter creeps in with its first frosts, I look back on that market day, the one that nearly broke me, and see it as the start. The moment I wanted to vanish became the one that made me visible, to her and to myself. Laura and I sit by the fire in her living room, her head on my lap, the wind howling outside. Think we'll make it? She asks, sometimes half joking. I kiss her forehead. We already are. No rings, no vows yet. Just us against the odds, choosing each other every day. And in this vast, whispering town, that's enough to feel like forever.